Okay, I think
Ready?
let's start.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. We're on Facebook Live. This is Vrajalila, and tonight our topic is this really top-heavy topic cultivating spiritual humility. And we're going to dive into talking about how do we actually live this principle, this very important spiritual principle that our whole spiritual life depends on us being humble. So I'm very excited that we're talking about this tonight. I'm going to share just some things, and then as usual, we'll go into asking some questions. So if anyone would like to share anything after I speak a little. So humility, most of the time, I mean, we as spiritualists, we hear this word all often, humility. And we do have an understanding that that is so key and so important to our spiritual practices, our spiritual development. And so we want to understand how do we understand humility? Because sometimes we think humility means just to be like meek in our behavior, just, more. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says more humble than a blade of grass. So when we hear that, more humble than a blade of grass, sometimes we think that that means just, just being like this meek person. And we sometimes mistake humility to be a meek behavior, which it's not that it's wrong. Of course, meekness is there. However, something that I learned many years ago from Bhakti Maharaj is that humility also means to be brave. He says like that, to be humble and brave. So how do we do that? It sounds so paradoxical, right? You're humble, which means being kind of submissive, and at the same time being brave. How do we develop these two aspects of ourselves? And so, firstly, it's important to know what spiritual humility means, especially from the point of a Vaishnava, of someone that's practicing bhakti. So, from that perspective, humility is definitely a spiritual quality. It's not a material one, and it comes from understanding our real self in relationship to Krishna. Sorry, I'm turning off my phone. This is not good. In relationship to Krishna. So it's important for us to understand that real humility, true humility, means that we're seeing ourselves as servants of God. In the case of those that practice bhakti, we're servants of Krishna. And so that then when we have that foundational understanding, we can then enter into what it means to be humble. So there are so many stories and so many pastimes, about people that are humble in spiritual life. And I thought I would just maybe share some things in my own life about humility. For me, humility is kind of, I understand it theoretically, and I understand as devotees, as Vaishnavas, as people that are aspiring to love God, this quality, the spiritual quality, we really do need to develop. However, I have learned over the years that that I am it's an growing process to really practically apply humility in my day-to-day life. It's really, there's always kind of opportunities that are given to me to see how successful I may be in being humble. And sometimes I'm really alarmed to see that I'm not so humble. At the same time, I am very excited and very grateful that I can learn more about how to practice this mood of humility, because it's definitely a mood that one has, and it's not just it's not just something we theorize. As we learn more about humility, as we learn about those personalities that practice humility, as we practice it more, then it starts becoming a part of our being. We start ourselves becoming humble, and so that starts looking a certain way. What that means is some behaviors start changing. So generally, when we're not humble, we have a lot of egoic behavior. Our behaviors are usually monitored by our minds, our egos, and generally, when we are in this kind of egoic mentality, it's usually based on I, me, and mine. Everything is about me. When we start practicing humility, which means really incorporating others in our lives and thinking that other people are important or just as important as we are, then we start making a paradigm shift in our consciousness, and our behavior starts changing. So there's so many ways that I have seen in my own life in practicing bhakti where perhaps I might have done things from a place of deep egotistic thoughts, or either egotistic behavior. And I see over the years that I am much more thoughtful about how I act, how I practice what I do. However, there are times when I may not be thoughtful, and that's when I get an opportunity to really learn. Like, wow, I am still growing in that particular area. So there's an area that I want to talk about in terms of humility specifically tonight, and that area is based on feedback, getting feedback. Because I have found for me in my growing in bhakti that giving feedback is always easier than receiving feedback. And so tonight we'll talk a little bit about that. So I wanted though now to ask you, some of you, what are some of your thoughts about humility? What are some thoughts you may have?
Share. It's actually a hard question for me. What is humility? I think like sometimes it's easy to understand. Sometimes it's like, okay, what is actual humility? And as you told, like be humble and brave. So sometimes it's a challenging to understand, am I humble, or should I be humble in this position or brave? And it's very resonated with me that you told that it's about not about I, me, and mine. It's about others. So probably when I think about others more than about myself, it's real humility.
Mm. Yeah, this is a topic that's discussed by so many people. It's of course, it's one of the main qualities for one to have when they're exploring spiritual life, and so therefore it's such a topic that we really need to immerse ourselves in it, study what it means, and at the same time practice in our lives. And like you said, Kisheri, it's not always easy, because there are times when we need to make decisions, or we may need to say something, and we may not know, am I being brave to say this, or am I acting from ego, or am I being brave? By being brave to say something, is that being humble or not humble? So there are times when we might not be so clear. However, when we do understand how great these personalities that are exemplary of humility, how they behave. And then we start getting more of an understanding of that. Like my spiritual master, I guess, Bhakti Chitra, I guess when I was with him, I could understand I could not just understand, I could see how things that I might have reacted to in a certain way, that he totally would just take another stand about it. He would totally speak differently about it. And so I could see that, okay, this is what it means to be humble. Someone that really doesn't take things very personally and make it about them so much that that person is always thinking about the well-being of another person. Um, I saw that in him. I saw him practice that. And so he lived like that. And so when you see people like that, you know that this mood of humility does exist. At the same time, it can definitely be challenging to know when we are being humble and when we're not. And in some ways, some things we know is just very gross, and we know we're not being humble. We know the ego is definitely acting. But there are times when we may not be sure, and so that's important for us. Is there someone else that might want to share anything?
Yeah, Anna shared that sometimes hard to separate humility from just not doing anything.
Yeah, that's why this topic is so important, feedback, because this aspect of looking at humility. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he explains, of course, we talked about this a little bit, that this little sutra, this little verse, Trinata Pisunichena, and that means that one should be humbler than a blade of grass. And so we might wonder, well, how can I be humbler than a blade of grass, And, I mean, the grass, everything happens on the grass. People walk on it. Nobody ever think, to turn back to the grass and say, oh, thank you. I'm so grateful you allow me to walk on you. So many things are going on, with the grass. And yet we're being requested to come to this level of humility as a spiritual practice. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he explains, this is a great saint, great spiritual teacher, that explains to us that the grass, it doesn't resist when we walk on it. It doesn't complain. It doesn't scream out, how dare you? Why are you walking on me? The grass doesn't say anything. So if we think like that, and if we think that everyone that matter to us or that we've ever met, that, we are also thinking about, how we can be like having this grass mentality, not ever saying anything negative, not ever speaking out about, how somebody may be trampling on the grass. And this is it's quite difficult to get this concept of humility unless we start just practicing it. Yeah. So let's look at some of the ways that we can practice humility. One of the things that kind of distract us or creates like a boundary for us to cross over is this mood of wanting respect. Generally, when we look at when we explore the things that go on in our lives, and we see our behavior, we may want to look and see how is my behavior based on wanting some respect for some reason or other. And so there are many great persons that have studied this mood of respect. One of the things that one of the things we can understand from this is that generally when we talk about respect, most of the time people simply want to be appreciated. And so respect, on one side of the coin, we can say it's respect. But then on the other side of the coin, it's like this need for appreciation. And so, it seems like, when we think that people might just want respect, if we kind of simultaneously understand, well, how much am I really appreciating this person? How much am I showing this person that I actually do care about them? I'm acknowledging them. Then that would be a way of us helping the other person to be aware that we do want to show some affection or some care, and in that way we can be somewhat humble if we can develop that mood to be humble to do that. And who do we want to do that with? So that's the question. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said, Amani na Amani Dena. We need to do that to everyone, everyone. So does that mean the people that we might think are disrespecting us or might not be appreciating us, right? This is when we're challenged to show appreciation for those persons, even when they're not appreciating us, even when they're not respecting us. How can we get in that mood and have that mentality to be able to appreciate them irregardless? And that's usually the testing that we get with humility. Humility is how much we can keep ourselves out of whatever situations may be there, and that instead of ourselves, which means our mind, our intelligence, our ego, instead of that self, how to really focus on the real self, which is the self that's a servant of Krishna, a servant of God. And if we can focus on that part of ourselves, then that part of ourselves is always reminding us that we are to show this appreciation and respect for everyone, no matter what they may say or what they may do, right? But that's not always easy. that really takes training. It takes training of the mind. It takes training of understanding how the ego works with us and being aware of the things that we resist. So resistance is a very huge part of what keeps us from becoming more and more humble. So for an example is, do you ever find yourself resistant to appreciating or respecting some of the qualities of the people that are around you, that maybe they might not show that to you, possibly? Have you had that experience?
Yes, I do. I do have this experience. And usually, like if I think about it, it's something that I cannot accept in myself. And have a hard time accepting it in others.
Yeah, yeah. And then you're not alone, you know? You're not alone. Does anybody else want to share that might be a part of this wonderful elite group of resistors? Yeah, because I mean, I also understand that, you know, that when you want someone to honor or respect you and you don't get it, then the problem is, you know, it's difficult to be humble because we kind of think, well, why not? Why aren't they treating me in a certain way? I'm supposed to be treated, right? I'm supposed to get respect. I'm supposed to get appreciation. So we have these expectations, and when these expectations are not met for us, then we become, this kind of make us not able to accept, not act on humility, not act on being humble. So this is where the braveness comes in, that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj talks about. He said, humble but brave. So humble but brave, in my understanding, has meant several different ways that we can kind of perceive this, understand this. And one of them is to be able to speak in such a way that we can speak what is going on, for us, but say it in such a way that it will encourage, inspire, or help another person. So we're brave to speak. At the same time, we're attentive to wanting to be able to connect more deeply with that person. Oftentimes, this is difficult. This can be difficult to do all the time. We may be able to do it some of the time, but maybe not all the time for some people. I know for me, I'm not able to do it all the time. The other part of that is for us, humble and brave, to be able to be humble enough to be brave, to make ourselves vulnerable to others, even when we don't think we're getting the respect and appreciation from them. Even when that's not there. The braveness, the bhakti braveness, comes from us being able to still acknowledge those persons and still be able to appreciate those persons and not take whatever they may do or say in a way that we are affected. Because then if we are, then that would be our ego that would be talking to us, right? I need respect, I need appreciation. So this this way of living our lives is not always easy, which is why humility is kind of like a way that we can become spiritually successful if we're able to actually live this way on a daily basis. Live with this kind of consciousness. So, anything anyone would like to share?
Anna wrote, yes, resistant to appreciate good qualities in others, especially if I don't agree with them.
Yeah. However, the thing that I have learned, and I'm learning, I'm still learning this. Generally, when we have a situation where we don't agree with another person for whatever the reasons may be, if we can acknowledge them and appreciate them, even though we don't agree, there is a like a satisfying feeling that comes in the heart where we kind of know that this person whatever might be going on for that person, maybe whatever might be happening for them, we kind of understand that, okay, they're experiencing something in their life at this particular time, why they may be responding in the way that they're responding. And I don't have to enter into that realm of what might be going on for them. I can appreciate them, knowing and understanding and having empathy that, okay, there's something happening, why they're responding in this way or why they're speaking in this way that I don't really appreciate. At the same time, I can then reach out with my spiritual power of humility and understand, like, okay, I don't really appreciate this, whatever this person is saying. However, this person is a servant of Krishna. This person is a dear servant of God. This person is really trying their best to serve God. So even though the behavior, I might not really appreciate that, I will go beyond that behavior and try to connect deeper with the real person. And so sometimes that's a little hard because we're not conditioned to do that. This is actually a training, and that's why we hear these amazing stories about people that have been able to do that. There's, as you know, that story of Dhruva Maharaj, when Lord Vishnu came to get him, to go back to the spiritual world, and he was able to ask for his mother and his stepmother and people that had really, someone that had kind of offended him. He couldn't think that he would go by himself, So it's that kind of mood that we're to develop, that we're all wanting to have this experience of being back with the Lord, with God. And we want to bring, everyone wants to, you want to encourage everyone to be coming, you know, all of us are encouraging each other to come. And on the journey, we may do and say things that often might be not accepted, you know, at the moment. However, if we can remember that, but you know what, we're all on this beautiful, wonderful journey to really have this beautiful experience of the Lord, then that can give us impetus to say, hey, this person's behavior, I don't understand it. However, that is not really who this person is. This person is like my companion on this journey, wanting to understand more about the Lord. And that's the dynamic of what can what can change material humility to spiritual humility. Because material humility, someone can just kind of say, you know, some words, right? Some words like, oh, I'm so sorry, or yeah, I didn't mean to do that, which, yes, that's important to do. However, if we can go beyond that, we do that. And at the same time, also remember, you know, as we're doing that, the sweetness of what we're all wanting to do in this life, what we're really giving our lives for. You know, we're really all like, it's like people wanting to go on, if we think materially speaking, you know, people all get together to go on a trip, right? They you know, like they get together and they're going on a cruise, or they're going, you know, on a camp trip, or they're going somewhere together, and they're just excited and happy. Everybody's coming, you know, people are coming together. And so it's like that on this journey of bhakti. We're all on this beautiful, beautiful trip, this beautiful adventure. And on this adventure, we have many different kinds of stops, so to speak. And the one that's a huge stop is this stop of not being humble. We can stay in a place of not being humble for a very long time. And so we always need encouragement on this journey. So it's important for us to have mentors and people that can help us, you know. And this idea, I'm sorry, it's not an idea. This actual principle of getting feedback is really important. So I'm going to get back on that. How to get feedback so we can really appreciate spiritual humility. And that takes a lot of courage. It takes being brave. It takes being brave to go and ask someone, you know, can you please give me feedback if I'm being a good parent? Can you give me feedback if I'm being a good wife? Can you give me feedback if I'm being a good exemplary disciple? Can you give me feedback if I'm speaking something that is not encouraging or not caring, not loving? Yeah, these are things that we are to do on a regular basis. And sometimes this is difficult. I know I have this experience sometimes when I'm getting feedback, and if I'm fixed in my position about something, you know, if I have a strong position, I become very resistant to wanting to get the feedback, especially if it comes in a certain way. You know, if the feedback isn't coming in a way that is sweet, that's kind of, you know, cushioned with some sweetness, then then the mind can absolutely reject, and the ego can just step in and say so many things. Why? You don't have to listen to this. Why would you want to listen to this? But this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught us, you know, that we need to have a humble state of mind. And in order to get that, we need to hear how our minds are not humble. We need to hear this from others. I mean, this makes it definitely easier and faster to jump on the train of letting our minds be, you know, more humble, getting in a more humble state of mind. We can jump on that train when somebody is like saying, look, you gotta, you know, stop this or stop that or stop the other thing, you know. So like this, this feedback is so very important for us to grow in our spiritual life. So my spiritual master used to give me feedback all the time. Sometimes it was really painful. And now that he's not on the planet, the devotees give me feedback. And sometimes it's also painful. Sometimes it's even more painful from the devotees in one way because the ego comes in the mix, you know? The ego says, why do you have to hear like this or like that? Why do you have to hear from this person? And so yes, we need to become aware that if the more feedback I get about the things that I'm doing that is not conducive to this wonderful, sweet, beautiful journey that we're taking to be with Krishna fully, completely, if somehow there's an obstacle in someone else might be seeing in our behavior, that we can be open to hearing that. And and really kind of accept it with love. And this is not always easy. I personally know this from my own experience. It's not always easy. So any feedback about that? What we just shared?
I have a lot of questions.
Okay.
Probably my first question is it's easy to see when it's devotees, it's easy to see that they are kind of part, they're servants of God and they are with you on the same journey. But if people are not spiritual and they may be even offensive to spirituality or to your beliefs, how it is possible to see that they are servants of God and they are on the same journey with you?
Yeah, I believe one of our principles that we are to follow, it says don't teach, or I believe it says don't preach to the faithless, people that are not really wanting to understand God, or maybe they're not interested, you know, in bhakti. We do that. We sometimes still do that because of compassion, just out of compassion for the souls that may unfortunately not yet want to be awakened. You know, we still try to reach out and help them. At the same time, we do that in a way where we're definitely not offending them. And so even though they may not have any interest, then if we have this mood of compassion that, okay, they're you know, they're not having any interest, however, just by them having an opportunity to see as devotees smile, a servant of God smile, or a servant of God say one kind word, or, you know, just do some action out of kindness and love, that person is going to get some spiritual benefit from that. And that will also help us, because we would go beyond what our ego is telling us. Don't reach out, don't, you know, why make yourself available to someone that doesn't want, you know, what we have to give, right? So I remember in the early days for me, when I was a newer devotee, newer practitioner of bhakti, one of the things I was taught that helped me so much is when I distributed books, is to not discriminate who I gave the books to just don't try to think, don't use the mind, you know, to figure out this person might take it, this person might not take it, this person might give a donation, this person might not. Just give it to everyone. Just go to everyone. And I remember, you know, many times doing that, where I remember once on Fifth Avenue, a few times on Fifth Avenue. At that time, we were distributing these records. It might have been George Harrison record, I can't remember. But I remember one time I gave this guy a record and he just broke it. It's like broke it in front of me, you know? I mean, and so we meet people like that. But because we were trained that, yes, people are, you know, they're very resistant to wanting to know anything about God. So yes, there definitely there will be people that will, their behavior could be disturbing, right? So, but because I had that training, I wasn't I was in no way ever on when I was distributing books, no matter how mean somebody was or how degraded their behavior may have been. My heart was always open because I was trained to think like that. So humility is like that. There's a certain kind of training where the mind and the ego kind of get shut down when we're practicing humility. And they're not able to um, they're not able to act, they're not able to interfere when someone is really being humble, when somebody is genuinely humble. The ego, the mind, the intelligence, they just become quiet, you know. So yeah, it's not easy, but however we can be trained to recognize the sweetness of compassion. We can be trained to get that taste. We can be trained um, just by that simple process of approaching anyone. There's another simple way of doing that. Sometimes, even without distributing books or anything like that, just by seeing people on the street. And I mean, nowadays it's gotten so crazy, but still we can do that to some degree, and just giving a smile, you know, just smiling to someone. And sometimes people just get caught off guard. They're like, what are they, are they smiling? You know, just to show some kindness to people. And this can awaken that compassion within us. So this is a practice. This is a practice of humility, to be able to go beyond, you know, somebody else's, you know, whatever might be happening for them, and share what we know is important for them, even though they might not want it. It's like the kids, right? Like a child. You know, a child, usually when you're giving the baby foods, they usually like the sweet ones. They don't like the other ones. But you know, they got to have they have to have the other vegetables. They have to have all the other stuff. So you try to give it in as sweetly as you possibly can, you know, trick them some kind of way in terms of, you know, maybe mixing it with something or whatever. Like, you know what's best. And you don't get mad at the child because the child doesn't want to take. You just understand. Yeah, they don't want to take it because it's not something that they like the taste of. So people in the world, they don't like the taste of surrendering to God because it means giving up, you know, sense gratification. And to give up sense gratification, it requires really like really practicing something different in our lives. So definitely that's not an easy thing. So therefore, because we kind of have some understanding of what it takes, and that's what makes us humble. That's the humility. That okay, yeah, it's hard with these people. At the same time, the humility is for me. Like when we say forgiveness is for me. It's not really for the other person. Practicing humility is for me because that helps me to become a more genuine servant of the Lord. It's not easy. And, you know, oftentimes, I know I speak for myself. I mean, wow. Every time I think that I've come to a certain level of having some successes with humility, something comes up that gives me like, whoa. Like, I thought I could, you know, I wasn't doing that anymore. I thought I was beyond this or whatever. But then I see like, oh, okay, you got to keep practicing. Just got to keep practicing. Don't give up, and don't think we're failures, and don't, you know, beat ourselves up, making ourselves bad. It's, you know, we're just conditioned souls. And it's just, you know, being humble really requires mercy and blessings to become humble. It's not ordinary, but it's there within us. It's there. Humility is actually lying within us. Yeah. Is there anyone else that would like to share?
Um, I'm checking Facebook. I don't have comments so far. I really appreciate what you shared about like really practical tool just to go outside and smile to the people, share something. It's a I will practice it tomorrow. I try to practice. And another part that really resonate with me, it's that don't give up. Don't think that you're a failure. It's like I like to think that like, oh, I'm a failure. I just I can't do it. I'm not capable. But it's really important to remind myself that just keep practicing. Don't give up. Thank you so much for those words. Um,
Yeah.
we have one comment from Milena. I keep reminding myself I never know who is in front of me. I can judge the person with eyes of my mind. I keep feeling that my heart is not big enough. I can't judge the person um, with eyes of my mind. I keep feeling that my heart is not big enough.
Um, that's that's healthy. It's healthy for us to not think that, you know, we are qualified to be able to really be humble, and that our hearts are so big, and we can be so kind and compassionate always. It's humble to not think that all the time, that we can be like that, we are like that all the time. It's very humble for us to it's humbling to keep that state of mind, that yes, my heart is hard, my heart is not soft. At the same time, though, we don't keep that consciousness in a mood of I can't get better. We can always improve. We can always get better. Our hearts can always get softer by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, by the mercy of our spiritual masters, by the mercy of the devotees, which is why my focus tonight is getting feedback. It's so important to be able to get feedback from important people, and get their opinions about us, um, check and see, like, people can see us better than we can see ourselves. And most of the time, it's difficult for us we don't want to hear what somebody else might say, because, it might, our ego might react. And so we might not be able to hear what the person say. And that can really be a distraction to softening our hearts. So I know I have that. I experience that a lot. Like I don't have to ask for feedback. People just give me feedback. I don't even have to ask for it. And generally, the feedback is always an area where I really am doing a lot of work. I've been doing a lot of work on that area, praying a lot, asking my Guru Maharaj to help me to speak kindly and to speak nice, just share when I share, to share things that can uplift others, that can nurture others, that can make others really know that they're appreciated, that let them know that I really accept them, that I so much care about them. That's an area that I've been trying to work on, but every so often I see if someone does or say something that's totally is unacceptable by me, I will see that I could fall into old patterns. And so I'm constantly being checked with that. And I know it's ultimately Krishna that's arranging for people to check me. And so, yeah. So if I don't resist, the more I resist this check, the longer it takes to feel that heart opening. And I personally experienced this. When as soon as I accept that, okay, I maybe didn't, I messed up. I didn't do that. I could have done that differently. I could have been different. I could have, whatever, I immediately feel this softness in my heart, even if the other people don't accept. I feel a difference. It's a big difference, because that spiritual connection is really real with Krishna. This spiritual connection of humility is real. It connects with Krishna. So when we're able to humble ourselves in the mood of, my heart is hard, and I do things sometimes that keeps that hardness. However, I do want to have a soft heart. I really want to. Then Krishna sends people and he sends situations, he sends opportunities. You know, the opportunities are provided, and some of them we might be able to like successfully address them, and some we might not. And then it's like a learning process, like, oh, okay, gotta kind of, woo, gotta kind of grow with that some more, gotta beg some more, gotta, you know, be more attentive to how I'm, and I'm using myself as an example, how I may be caring for another person, how I may be giving that person attention, how I may be giving that person affection, how I may be giving that person, you know, my love, my care. Then I become more aware, and then I can grow it. I can grow some more, and then Krishna will send something else, and you know. So it's constant growing. It's constant growing, opening the heart. So don't beat yourself up, and don't think you're a failure. Please, this is probably one of the most damaging aspects of growing spiritually, is when we don't recognize that we're imperfect. We're in a learning process. We're growing. God is really kind. Krishna is merciful. He's sending us help. The help may not come in the way we like it. At the same time, if we can understand, but this is a help. This is a help that's coming. And that we can really appreciate that help and see it as an opportunity for us to really connect deeper with becoming more humble. This topic of humility is vast, and you know, sometimes, I mean, this is a lifetime of this of being able to develop this quality to its perfection. It may be lifetimes of developing this quality of humility. We're so very fortunate, though, that we can become present to what aspiring to become humble feel like. And I think that's the sweetest thing, is to be able to see people that do exemplify being humble. It's what pulls us, right? We get dragged like closer to those persons that are humble. We don't like to be around so much people that are not caring about others. You know, nobody wants to be around people like that so much. So yeah, let's all try to open our hearts, pray to open our hearts. Is there someone else there? Okay. So let's ask for feedback and start getting blessings from everyone. Ask for feedback. Whatever we do, ask for feedback. And even though we might not like to hear it, just hear it as a blessing that's coming from the Lord himself. Thank you very much.
Thank you.